Alright everyone, welcome back to another Game Vault video. As always, I'm Captain Beefy with the Game Vault, and we're going to talk about video games and governments and when they intersect, what happens. So, let's cue up the music and we'll get right to it. Alright, so following reports of Dustborn receiving funding from the EU, the US government spent over $250,000 on a counter disinformation game. So in the wake of Red Thread Games releasing Dustborn, it was revealed that the developer received funding from the EU, European Union, as well as the Norwegian Film Institute. Now it's being reported that the US government spent over $250,000 on a counter disinformation game. I wonder what that could be. Former World of Warcraft team lead Mark Kern reported that Dustborn received 14 million kroner, or 1.4 million, from the Norwegian Film Institute, as well as 150,000 euros from the Creative EU grant program. Dustborn is basically an Antifa simulator. That's him who said that. Okay, I knew I saw that somewhere, and I'm like, man, that cracked me up when I heard it. Following this report, Craig Skistimus, aka Stuttering Craig, who owns and hosts the Side Scrollers podcast, shared that the U.S. government funded a counter-disinformation game to the tune of $275,000. Back in 2021, he wrote on X, "Everyone is laughing at Norway and the EU for funding Dustborn, but a quick search shows that the U.S. also provided $275,000 of funding for a new counter-disinformation game." And here it is. U.S. mission to the Netherlands. So I'm guessing, it's for the same game, probably. In fact, a document from the U.S. Embassy, the Hog Public Affairs section of the U.S. Department of State, issued a notice of the funding for the game. The notice stated, the U.S. Embassy announces an open competition for organizations to submit applications to 1. Produce an English and Dutch language pilot version of a counter-disinformation game. Requirements below. 2. Produce a French version of the game. 3. Produce one additional translation into a European, Asian, and or African language to be determined at a later date. 4. Host the game on the company's own servers. And 5. Develop and implement data collection and analysis methodologies to demonstrate the project's achievement of expected results. And 6. Promote games to target audiences. Please carefully follow all instructions below. The document noted. Wow. The document noted digital games have proven to be an effective tool in building cognitive resistance to disinformation across diverse environments and cultural contexts. The U.S. Embassy is accepting proposals for the development of a digital game that incorporates active inoculation theory along with other digital media literacy education methods in a fun, interactive experience targeting global internet users ages 15 and up. They want to start them young, 15. Primary gameplay should simulate the experience of engaging in common disinformation and propaganda activities while educating the user on digital literacy applicable in the real world. Yeah, this has the U.S. government written all over it. There's nothing... I could talk for hours on why I hate my government so much. I love my country. I do. I am a patriot. I love the United States of America. It is probably the single greatest nation in the history of humanity. It has its flaws, yes, and it is not perfect, yes, that's correct. But its biggest albatross is it's the government. The federal government is utter garbage. It is a self-serving machine that all it wants to do is you feed it bodies and it grinds out money, and that's what it does. And it'll use and abuse its citizens to no end. It will lie to them. It's awful. And it does it all in the name of making money for those who run the government. And it's obvious. It's been this way for years. Republican, Democrat, whatever you are, you're probably part of this machine. Especially if you're a classic government official, classic politician. You're part of this machine. And that's why it's good to push back against all of this, I've watched my government do things like, just in the last couple years, spread disinformation about COVID, put everybody into a panic, try to force businesses to mandate that people get experimental vaccines so that they can continue working, threatened to destroy lives, actually destroyed lives, put people in jail for things that were minor but trumped up the charges into something synonymous with treason, all as political hit jobs. They've tried to impeach a former president several times. They've tried to indict him for several different reasons, and then they tried to murder him. And there's nothing you can say that will convince me that the government was not behind that. Absolutely nothing. Call me a conspiracy theorist, whatever. I'm certain that the 2020 election was, shall I say, won by dubious means. Was it won fairly? On paper, maybe, but the method behind the way votes were harvested and the way COVID was used as a weapon to keep people at home and to force, from home voting and all that, it was all very, very not right. There's a lot going on there that can't be explained. And there was definitely corruption. There was definitely things happened. But, not enough can be proven. Was it enough to make a difference? I'm sure there was in the long run. Hopefully we've learned our lesson as a country and as both political parties and can actually do things maybe slightly more, above the table this time. I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all. The U.S. government is corrupt as hell. As soon as we went to... I'm Ukrainian. I'm half Ukrainian. My mother's full Ukrainian. As soon as we started the war with the Ukraine, and I remembered that people like Hunter, Biden and Nancy Pelosi's son, and there's other sons of prominent political figures, whether they be the president or senators or House representatives, I don't know, work over there dealing with high-paying jobs in energy and other, fields. I knew we weren't going to war because we care about the Ukraine. They don't care about the Ukraine. And half the assholes who put the Ukrainian flag in their profile when this war started couldn't have pointed to the Ukraine on a map to save their life a week before the war started, okay? None of them could. A bunch of dirtbags. They all just put up whatever flag they want to fly, whatever the flavor of the month is. That's what they do because the machine tells them to do it, and they all join in on that. But that's enough of all that crap. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here. Successful proposals would incorporate active inoculation theory and address current disinformation and propaganda tactics. The delivered product should be modular, scalable, and expandable so that later iterations could address additional problem sets such as violent extremism and health misinformation. Wow! This game would be piloted simultaneously with players in the UK and the Netherlands, and lessons learned from these pilots will inform the final version of the game intended ultimately for global audiences, it stated. What they're saying here is they want to indoctrinate everybody through this game, gamers from around the world, right? And they want to start experimenting in the UK and the Netherlands. Well, I gotta tell you, man, I'm disappointed in the UK. I can't believe the UK used to rule the world. This is the softest bunch of people I've ever seen lately, and it's sad. And I know it's not the people themselves, it's the government. The government is so corrupt over there, and they've allowed foreign interests that do not align with the interests of the crown and the people of Great Britain to infiltrate their government on every level, and it's created this rot inside of that government, and it's horrible. It's horrible. They want to arrest people for talking about the riots and all that. They want to... That one clown was, threatening people here in the U.S. I mean, come on, man. Come at me, bro. You forget the last time you guys tried to exert your authority over the U.S. What happened? We will trounce you back into the Stone Age this time, guys. Good God. Hopefully everybody with you. Maybe the next time you rise up, you'll keep your balls instead of cutting them off somewhere along the line and giving them to a foreign invader. Anyway, it appears the game was indeed funded as a number of congressmen, including Michael T. McCall, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Brian Mast, Christopher H. Smith, Daryl Issa, Maria Elvira Salazar, Keith Self, Corey Mills, and Ken Buck sent a letter to the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, regarding the game and other issues related to the Global Engagement Center. The congressman wrote, "The GEC continues to stray from its founding mission through its subsidized censorship of free speech and disfavored opinions, particularly by established conservative media and individuals through grants, partnerships, and awards to entities including the Global Disinformation Index, the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, the Atlantic Councils, Digital Forensic Research Lab, and Moonshot CVE. The GEC also appears to take the official position that populism, whether at home or abroad, is an affront to democracy and the First Amendment rights of all Americans. It then listed a number of examples, including the video game. In 2021, the GEC spent $275,000 producing a counter-disinformation video game that programmed audiences to associate citizen critiques of government waste, fraud, and abuse with a social media disinformation campaign. Let me tell you, man, the government is not above criticism, and nobody wastes more money than the government. Okay? Nobody commits more fraud than the government, and nobody abuses people more than the government. In fact, the U.S. government, being a citizen of the United States and dealing with the government, is like being in an abusive relationship, right? It really, really is, because the government says, they want to do things to you, right? They want to separate you. Like during COVID, for instance, they wanted to alienate everybody. You can't meet. You can't go to church. You can't have family gatherings. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't have your little restaurant open or your little boutique, your little store. None of that can be open and all that. But you can all go to Walmart. Yeah, you can shop at Walmart. While you're there, you can only go up and down the aisle certain directions because, that's going to prevent the spread of the worst disease in the history of humanity, the worst infection, virus, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that's going to do it. Yeah, we'll put up a small piece of plexiglass between the cashier and you because that's going to prevent the spread of that disease. And yeah, you could put a bandana from the dollar store over your mouth and nose, or a small cloth mask, or your own crocheted one, whatever, just any kind of basic crappy little mask. That's going to prevent it because, yeah, that's what this is all about. That was the biggest joke I've ever seen. Right from day one, I knew it was full of crap, and I said it. And I almost called things as they were happening, like right before they were happening this whole time throughout the pandemic. I've got a third eye to see these kind of things. I see how people are. I see how the government is, and it's not that I can see the future or anything like that. It's just I can read people. I can read the way things are going and predict things based off of that because I love history and I love humanity and social studies and stuff like that and how people work, psychology and all that. So once you know these things and you've got an understanding of these things, you can very much predict outcomes on stuff like this. And I knew what it was going to be about. When they said 2 weeks, I knew it wasn't going to be 2 weeks. 2 weeks to stop the spread. In the beginning, they said don't wear masks because they didn't want to take them away from, the hospitals and all that. And then they said, no, do wear masks because somebody made a deal with China and brought in billions of masks for everybody. And people are still wearing them. And then the crime just rocketed out of control. And everybody had masks on, so you couldn't see who was committing these crimes. And, if it's one thing that's going to happen with people is they're always going to be the worst they can be in great numbers. You know what I mean? And so, you give everybody a mask in this country, and of course they're going to do horrible things because humans are horrible. We're horrible. We're disgusting people for the most part. There are good people out there. But overall, I have very little faith in humanity, especially when it gathers in masses and especially when it organizes in the form of a government, a corporation, a religion, or anything like that. And anytime human beings all gather together, they just become more and more corrupt. It just feeds off of each other, and it just gets worse and worse. And here we're seeing more examples of it. But it continued in 2020. The GEC produced a similar counter-disinformation video game explicitly targeting political misinformation, apparently modeled off the 2020 presidential election cycle. The letter then noted in the above counter-disinformation video games, the GEC selected and supported the University of Cambridge Social Decision-Making Lab, whose recent disinformation research includes targeting U.S. conservatives, targeting climate change deniers, vaccine skeptics, and election deniers. I fall under all four of those, to be honest with you. To some degree, there is nuance, right? Yes, I am conservative. Yes, I believe that humans do have an impact on the environment, but if you remember correctly, about 6 years ago now, maybe 8, maybe it was 8, AOC said we had 12 years left before the world was destroyed because of climate change, and people went into a panic about it, and they tried to pass this Green New Deal. That means we only have 4 years left before we're all dead, and she really doesn't seem to be very upset about it anymore. Al Gore talked about it back in the 90s, before the turn of the century, and then he bought waterfront property and stuff like that, and flies around in a jet, and so they lie. They lie, and we all know that, yes, climate change is real to some degree, but not the way they say it, and their answer to it is not for the betterment of our world. What they want to do is control us and tax us, charge us more money to, what did they do? They banned gas stoves in New York, I think. I mean, come on, dude. It's absolutely retarded what these people want to do. They want to get rid of meat because cows fart and create methane gas, which warms up the atmosphere. It's utterly insane. Vaccine skeptics. Hey, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like the amount of vaccines that we give children. I don't like what they did with the COVID vaccine. I don't like the fact that they tried to force on anybody. I don't like the fact that it was developed in a rush, under a lot of pressure, during a time of great strife with our government. Right? Vaccines take years to develop, years to test, and they go through all kinds of rigmarole before they're passed and deemed safe for everybody. This all happened within, a year? Operation Lightspeed that Donald Trump started. I love Trump as a president, but that was one of his biggest failures, was falling for this. He could have stopped this. It would have been hard because he had so much going against him on that little weasel, Dr. Fauci, and all that, pushing his little... That man disgusts me more than anybody else. He needs to be, from a tree in Washington, D.C. as an example of what happens to traitors and treasonous men and women. But anyway, I look at the amount of vaccines we give our children nowadays, and it's utterly ridiculous. From the moment they're born, all throughout their childhood, they're getting pumped full of drugs. And we wonder why we have the issues we have with children these days. We wonder why we have so many people on the spectrum of, mental health, mental illness, and all that. So many kids that think they're transgender, or that think this and hate themselves. We have so many people with autism and Asperger's and all these other problems that, 70 years ago we didn't have in the number that they have these days. And there are arguments that, they were there. It's just we didn't know about it so much and all that. But I think there's some correlation here, and again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor and all that, but I can't imagine anything good side effect wise. Now vaccines do serve a purpose to some degree. Yeah, we don't have kids being born and getting polio and dying. We don't have measles, we don't have the pox, smallpox, or anything like that in this country. That's wonderful. So yeah, they do serve a purpose, but I think it's gotten out of hand, and I think it's gotten out of hand to a point where, these big pharma companies are making so much money off of it, and they live hand in hand with this government, and the money just goes back and forth between the two of them as these things are mandated in schools and all that, and our future suffers. Our kids are born with all these issues, and they suffer, and we don't do anything about it. It makes me upset. Then there's the whole election denier thing. Like I said, did Trump win the 2020 election? Obviously not, otherwise he'd be in office right now. Did Biden win? Obviously he won with the final count and all that, but dubious things happened, and I do not trust the method behind the way we got all those votes and all that. I don't trust the method on there. Was there cheating involved? It's been proven that there was fraud. How much? No one can decide how much there was, So I guess it was quote unquote an acceptable amount according to the right people, But this time around there's going to be a lot more scrutiny, and I think they're going to have to do a lot more dubious stuff to get their way again. And in doing so, I think they're going to expose themselves even more, and hopefully people will get caught, and hopefully people will suffer the repercussions for it. I want to see people suffer for the horrible things they've done to this country and the way they want to destroy it. I want to see them suffer. I really do. I mean, I'm taking the gloves off. For too long, we've tried to be nice. We've tried to be, we're nice, we're above all that. Not anymore, man. Not anymore. I've been called the worst things in the world because of the things I believe in. I've been called horrible things and had my my opinion, just whatever. The gloves are off. I don't care anymore. I have zero empathy in my heart for what I consider my enemy. And I consider people who condone this kind of stuff my enemy. And that's what it is. You may be my neighbor, but you can also be my enemy. And that's sad. That's not a life I wanted to live. That's not something I ever wanted to see growing up in this country. But here I am at a point watching this country toe the line of possible civil war. And I honestly have to wonder, what will happen? How will it happen? Yeah, it's not going to be like it was a couple hundred years ago, but it's not going to be good either. Fortunately, I live in an area where we really don't have to worry about that, If Antifa showed up in my town, they would disappear in a few hours and you'd never find them. It's just the way it is where I am. But still, it's absolutely ridiculous that what we're living in right now. But anyway, according to a report from Real Clear Policy, the game in question was called Cat Park. And a leaked memo from the State Department explained Cat Park builds on the success of the first game funded by GEC Harmony Square. Cat Park inoculates players against real-world disinformation by showing how sensational headlines, memes, and manipulated media can be used to advance conspiracy theories and incite real-world violence. It adds, the game, now available in English, Dutch, French, and Russian, with more languages to come based on post requests, help players determine between reliable and unreliable information. A toolkit produced for the game and published in October 2022 stated in a study conducted by the University of Cambridge, people who play Harmony Square find misinformation significantly less reliable after playing, are significantly more confident in their assessment, and are significantly less likely to report sharing misinformation. It's unclear how the State Department defines misinformation. The toolkit does reveal that Dutch studio Tilt developed the game. I'll tell you exactly how they define misinformation. Anything that goes against whatever narrative they are currently pushing. Tilt seemingly came into existence in 2021 at the same time the State Department funded Cat Park. On the company's website, it clearly states it opposes hate speech. Of course it does, because hate speech is something you cannot define. I 100% fully support hate speech. Sorry, but I do. Hate speech is free speech. You can say hateful, awful things. People say it to me all the time. I don't try to silence them for it, right? Why would I? Why should I? They're entitled to their opinion, and I'm entitled to tell them to F off if I feel that way about them, Or have a conversation with them. It doesn't matter. You're free to practice your hate speech, in my opinion, all you want. You're also free to suffer the consequences of it from society and the people that you direct it at. I mean, that's the way it goes. But it reads, at Tilt, we believe that the world should be a safe and inclusive place for everyone. Anytime I hear this, anything that opens up with this, it makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit, because it just shows you how weak and soft humanity has gotten, right? We used to... The world should be a safe and inclusive place for everyone. No, the world is anything but a safe place, and it's anything but exclusive. Anywhere you go in the world, you are going to be unsafe, and you are going to be excluded by somebody, somewhere, sometime. It's just the way it is. It's the nature of humanity. It's the nature of the world. Sorry to shit all over your utopian vision for the future, but it's never going to happen. It goes against humanity itself and the way we are, regardless of race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. Now, that part's a lie, because of race, they don't... If you're white, they don't give a shit about you. Religion, if you're Christian, they don't care about you. Gender, if you're a man, they don't care about you. And sexual orientation, if you're straight, they don't care about you. They want a world that should be safe, inclusive place for everyone of color, anyone who's not Christian, anyone, or women, and those who identify as women, and, the LGBT mafia. That's what that should read. That's why we're on a mission to make the internet a safer place, by combating and detecting online hate speech. It also shares its definition of hate speech. This should be funny, we define hate speech as abuse that is targeted at a protected group, or at its members for being a part of that group. Protected groups are groups based on age, disability, gender identity, race, national or ethnic origins, religion, sex, or sexual orientation, which broadly reflects Western legal consensus, particularly the U.S. 1964 Civil Rights Act, the U.K.'s 2010 Equality Act and the EU's Charter of Fundamental Rights. Based on these definitions, we approach hate speech detection as the non-binary classification of content as either hateful or non-hateful. Our research is multilingual. Oh my God, this is exhausting. These people are absolutely exhausting. Anyway, a contract with the U.S. State Department's Global Engagement Center named Devor DevKick did an entire breakdown of the game in a video published to YouTube on September 2022. In a video DevKick shared, Cat Park is based on research into the theory of active inoculation pioneered by University of Cambridge's Social Media Decision-Making Lab. Much as vaccinations are intended to work by exposing subjects to an innocuous strain of a virus in order to trigger an immune response, empirical studies indicate that the controlled experience of disinformation through a game can build cognitive resistance to disinformation in the real world. This concept is also known as pre-bunking. He added, "We can leverage games like Cat Park to proactively educate ourselves about common disinformation techniques so we can better be prepared to spot fake news no matter what form it takes." So it makes me wonder if this is going to backfire on the left because, they're the ones that are spreading the crap all the time. They're the ones that are full of it. Nothing true comes from them. They only destroy. They're the most dishonest people you've ever heard in your life. Very disingenuous. Anyway, the Foundation for Freedom Online heavily criticized the game and the initiative in general, describing it as behavioral modification propaganda games intended to make young people around the world view populist content online as being de facto disinformation. Populist. The organization added, "It is almost as if the government is using the video game of Cat Park to get young people to subliminally believe that opposing the government is only done by disinformation purveyors. How convenient for the government that this is government-funded game has such a plot." And it's right. The populist movement, the MAGA movement in the United States is a populist movement. Bernie Sanders on the left ran a populist movement. And you saw what the Democrats did to him. Every election, they would just, they'd let him get so far, and then they'd be like, "Sorry, Barry, this is the door. You're not going through it." I don't know how he stands these people day by day. I'd have told them all to pound sand by now, and yeah. But in any case, these populist movements, that's why you see such organized hatred against Donald Trump, because the populist movement is very unpopular with government. And stupid people believe the government, right? Stupid people believe the government actually cares about them. And that's what's sad. Stupid people listen to what famous people say, singers and actors and all that. And they believe that they're smart. And because they're going to vote for Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or whoever, that they should too, because, Taylor Swift, man, she knows what it's about. Taylor Swift hasn't picked the right dude in all her years. Every album that she writes is because she picked the wrong dude. Why would you let her pick your freaking president for you, you dumbasses? Unbelievable, Guys like Robert De Niro. I used to admire De Niro as an actor. I'm part Italian too, the Italian American. Hey, he's cool. He played The Godfather Part 2. He played Goodfellas. Now I look at him and all I see is a raging lunatic that I can't stand. Even watching his old movies, they've been spoiled for me. Mark Hamill, that's another retard. I loved Star Wars as a kid. Never a big Luke fan. I was more of a Han Solo fan. Luke was always kind of like the doofball and all, but he was cool. He became a Jedi and all that. And in the end, he had a good arc. Now he's just a lunatic. Stephen King, a writer I admired when I was younger. Can't even stand to read his work anymore because he turned out to be such a bonehead. It's all... Maybe this game will inoculate people against disinformation, but it's going to backfire, and they're going to be able to start to see through the bullshit like those of us who are awake and not woke can see. And look at this. Look at this picture of these characters from Dustborn. Absolute junk. And look at her face. You ever seen a more punchable face in a video game character? Anyway, what do you think of the U.S. government funding a game whose main purpose is to propagandize teenagers? Talk about insidious. I mean, that is just absolutely disgusting and despicable. And I'm not surprised one single bit, and I expect nothing less from my government. So, congratulations. Y'all reached a new low there, U.S. government. I can't wait to see what happens this November. And if, we're just going to leave it at that. I'll leave a like on the video down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring that bell if you like this kind of content. I'll see you all next time. Until then, peace.